Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Pesachim Daf is completely and totally about the concept of Isser Hana, when something is forbidden to have any benefit, fiscal, financial, or otherwise derived from it. And the question is, when the Torah says not to eat something, does that also mean you cannot get other benefits from it, such as burning it, using it for fuel, or selling it, or any of these things? The machlokes Chizkiya and Rabbi Yevo we've seen so far. Chizkiya says no. Only if the Torah says lo yeh ochel, it should not cause eating. That means you cannot gain any financial benefit from it. According to Rabbi Yevo, no. Anytime the Torah says don't eat something, automatically included in that is the fact that you aren't allowed to get any benefit from it at all, unless specified otherwise. How do we know that? Says Rabbi Yevo, because in the case of nevela, the Torah specifies otherwise. The Torah says you can't eat it, and it says, but you are allowed to gain benefit from it. Obviously, unless the Torah says you are allowed to, the assumption is if you can't eat it, you can't get any other benefit from it at all. Now, the Gemara is going to have a number of kashas on this. First of all, the Gemara is working through the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir as to how the pasuk allowing hana in nevela works. Then the Gemara will discuss how other psukim work, and then we're going to have a list of kashas which will all consist of one of two things. Either we'll see somewhere where the Torah specifically says that something is forbidden to get hana from. The question is, why do you need to tell me that? According to Rabbi Abo, that's the general assumption, and according to Chizkiya, if it says lo yeh ochel, that's the general assumption. The other type of question will be where the halacha, not a pasuk in the Torah, but the halacha is that you are allowed to gain benefit from something, but the Torah doesn't say so. And that would contradict Rabbi Avo's assertion that anytime the Torah says something is forbidden to be eaten, it's automatically forbidden to get enough from it as well, unless it says specifically otherwise. So first of all, we're working through the concept of nevela. Now about nevela, the Torah says that you're allowed to clearly... It says you're allowed to give it to a ger, that's a ger toshav, somebody who is not converted to Judaism, but he has disavowed avodah zarah, and you're allowed to sell it to a guy, complete guy. And the Gemara had said there was a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, whether that's specific or not. Rabbi Yehuda says that's very specific, you're not allowed to change the order there, that's a very specific halacha. According to that, Rabbi Yehuda, this pasuk is not extra in any means. It has to tell me this halacha. You're only allowed to give it to a ger and sell it to a guy, not vice versa. So how could Rabbi Abo say that this is an extra pasuk, which must show that the rule is that anything which is forbidden to be eaten is also forbidden to derive hana from the fact that you have this place where the Torah specifies otherwise? I need the Torah to specify that there is a permitted hana here, because there's only a certain type of permitted hana. Meaning, very logically, I could assert that everywhere the Torah says you cannot eat something, the assumption is you are allowed to get hana. Here, why does it spell it out? It's not just spelling it out; it's telling me a specific rule. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Abo will say that in the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, we have a different source for the halacha, that anytime the Torah says lo seichel, you're not allowed to eat something, it's automatic that you're not allowed to get it now either, and that's because in the case of treifa. Now, treifa is not quite the same as an avela. Treifa is talking about an animal which is mauled by a wild animal in the field. It is halachically a avela, but it's a different pasuk. And over there, the Torah says you can throw it to your dogs. Now, the fact that the Torah says you can throw it to your dog doesn't show me that it's specifically telling you that you can get hana from, and meaning everywhere else you can't get hana. Here, it could be that everywhere else you can't, you are allowed to get hana from it. Here, it's telling me to throw it to a dog, specifically in order to reward the dogs for not barking at the Jews when they left Mitzrayim. However, the pasuk here goes further, and it says an X word oso. It says you throw this to a dog, which implies that other types of things which you aren't allowed to eat, you are not allowed to throw to a dog, and that indicates that those other things, all those other things, are Aser bahana, just from the fact that the Torah says not to eat it. That's what Rabbi Abo says would be the source according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Meir, we wouldn't need that. According to Rabbi Meir, we have the fact that the Torah says that you are allowed to get hana from a nevela. So now the Gemara asks, well, according to Rabbi Meir, how would Rabbi Abo explain the word oso? You're telling me that the word oso is extra. It teaches me that everything else has an Isser Hana. According to Rabbi Meir, I know everything has an Isser Hana. Why do I need the word oso? So Gemara says it's to tell me that when you slaughter an animal in the Azara, and the Beis HaMikdash said you're not supposed to, it's to tell me that is Aser Banaha as well. How so? The pasuk about Treifa, where it says the X word oso, the Gemara in Masechta Chulin considers it to be a category of things which are forbidden because they were not done in its proper place. The Gemara there learns that if there's a fetus that's being born at the time of the attack, that's included in the Yisr. So it's about things which are not in their proper place. So the Gemara here means to say that this type of thing which is not in its proper place, it's a treifa in the field, that in that case there is no Isser Hana. However, there is a different type of thing out of its place that is in Isser Hana, and that's referring to when you slaughter a carbon inside the Beis HaMikdash. I'm sorry, when you slaughter a non-carbon inside the Beis HaMikdash, you have the wrong thing in the wrong place, that's an Isser Hana, as opposed to this, which you're allowed to throw to the dogs. Now, the reason why I would need a special source there to teach me that it's Asur B'Hana, even though everything is Asur B'Hana, is because there the Torah never says you're not allowed to eat it. We learn from a derivation that you're not allowed to eat it, but the Torah never says lo sochlu. Rabbi Abo only said that there's an automatic Isser Hana when there's an Isser Achila, when the Torah tells me there's an Isser Achila. If the Torah doesn't tell it to you, you wouldn't say it, and therefore I need this to include over here. Okay, now we launch, before we launch, the Gemara says, what is Rabbi Yehuda? How does Rabbi Yehuda know that halacha? So the Gemara says he holds that halacha is not halacha d'oraisa. The Isser Hana on a regular animal which was slaughtered in the Beis HaMikdash incorrectly, and there is no Isser Hana on that midah oraisa. That's only Nesed Rabbanan. Okay, now the Gemara launches into a list of kashas. Most of them on Rabbi Abo. Some of them also apply to Chizkiah. That's where it says lo yachal. So the first kasha is from the halacha of Gid Hanasha. Gid Hanasha is a nerve, the sciatic nerve in the hind legs of animals, which is forbidden to be eaten. And about Gid Hanasha, the psukim, the psukim say you're not allowed to eat it. Says Akin lo yochel b'nei Yisrael is Gid Hanasha, and therefore according to Rabbi Abo, it should be automatic. You're not allowed to get Hana from it either. Yet we have a Mishnah that says you're allowed to sell it to a guy. So the Mishnah adds more. It says you're allowed to sell it to a guy because it's visible. You don't have to be afraid that a Jews are going to buy it from the guy and eat it and assume that you took the Gid Hanasha out. No, you don't have to be concerned about that because it's visible. But what we do see is that you are allowed to sell it to a guy for profit. So why should you be allowed to do that? That's Hana. So Gemara says Gid Hanasha is different because when the Torah said that you're allowed to sell nevela, there is a Gid Hanasha in the nevela. So it's also telling you you're allowed to sell that Gid Hanasha. So you see the Torah is giving you a special halacha, you're allowed to sell the Gid Hanasha. That applies also to chaylev, which is also in every nevela. So Gemara says, now I understand that according to the opinion that holds that Gid Hanasha is food. It has taste and therefore it's forbidden because it's considered food. Then when you're selling it to the guy, when you're selling the nevela to the guy, you're also selling him the Gid Hanasha. He's also going to eat that. And you're clearly seeing that it's mutter b'hana. However, if you go like the opinion that says the Gid Hanasha is not food, the Gid Hanasha is not edible, it tastes like wood, it has no tam, and therefore no Isser would really apply to it except for the Torah makes a special creation called an Isser Gid Hanasha even on something that has no tam and no flavor. But really it's not included in any other Isser. So, according to that opinion, when you're selling the nevela to a guy, you're not giving him Gid Hanasha. The Gid Hanasha is there is no Isser on the Gid Hanasha. He can't even eat the Gid Hanasha. It's not even food, it's like a piece of wood. So then don't tell me that you're allowed to sell it to the guy because you're allowed to sell nevela to the guy. It's not part of the nevela and the Isser nevela. So according to that, Gid Hanasha is its own Isser of Gid Hanasha. You can't tell me that I learned that from the fact that I'm allowed to give the whole nevela, sell the whole nevela to the guy that I'm allowed to sell this to. It's not included. So how would you then know that the Gid Hanasha is permitted to sell to a guy? How would you know that if the Torah says you're not allowed to eat, it should be included in anything you're not allowed to eat, which is also to sell, which is Asur B'Hana according to Rabbi Abo. So the Gemara answers that the opinion that holds that Gid Hanasha has no taste and it's not food, that is Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon really does hold that Gid Hanasha is Asur B'Hana. And the Gemara proceeds to bring two brises to show that Rabbi Shimon is the one who says that it's not food, and Rabbi Shimon is the one who says that it's Asur B'Hana. First of all, about whether it's food or it's not food, the Gemara says if you have a Gid Hanasha of a behema tamei, a non-kosher animal, let's say you have the Gid Hanasha of a horse. So, every part of the horse which is food has the Isser horse on it. So Rabbi Yehuda says that it has the Gid Hanasha has two Isurim. First of all, it's horse. Second of all, it's Gid Hanasha. Rabbi Shimon says it has no Isurim. It doesn't have the Isser horse because it's not food, it's not edible, you get nothing out of it. It doesn't even have the Isser Gid Hanasha because the Torah only created a special Isser of Gid Hanasha on kosher animals. So non-kosher animals doesn't have this special Isser. Therefore, there is no Isser on the Gedanasha of a horse. It's not food, you're allowed to eat it completely, and therefore he's the one who says that the Gedanasha is not edible, it's not food, and no other Isser applies to it. And Rav Shimon also happens to be the one that says that where it does apply, on a kosher animal, there is an Isser Hana, and that clearly is another Machlokes, a Bryce that says Machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. You're allowed to get Hana from the Gedanasha or not. Rabbi Yehuda says you are, and Rabbi Shimon says you're not. So therefore everything fits. Rabbi Shimon is the one who says that it's not included in the gift or the thing you're going to sell to a guy. Therefore, there is no specific heter hana there, and Rabbi Shimon really holds that it's also bana, just like Rabbi Avo says. Anytime you have an isser achila, you also have an isser hana as well. Okay, concluding the discussion of Gedanasha, we move on to Gemara's next kasha, which is about blood. There's a pasuk that says that blood is forbidden to be eaten. It says, "Kol nefesh mekem lo yisaychal," you're not allowed to eat blood. And yet there's a Mishnah that says that blood was sold. There was a stream which ran through the Beis HaMikdash. That was used to flood the floor of the Beis HaMikdash and wash out all the blood of the two types of blood which was poured there. The one that was poured on the inner Mizbeach, the one that was poured on the outer Mizbeach. Different places blood was poured. It all mixed together in this water, and it ran out with the Kidron stream, and they sold it to gardeners. And a gardener was not allowed to just use it on his own. That would be me'il, that would be using hektish without proper permission. He had to buy it from hektish so that the kedusha came off. So you see, you're allowed to sell blood. Now, according to Rabbi Abo, since it says not to eat blood, it should be automatic. You're not allowed to sell blood. How are you allowed to sell the blood? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Abo answers, special pasuk teaches me there is a heter hana on blood, and that is because blood is linked to water. It says, lo yisachlenu, you shouldn't eat it. Al haaretz tishbachana kamayim, you should pour on the ground like water. It's linked to water, just like water. You're allowed to get hana from. Blood, you're also allowed to get hana from. Gemara says, well, there's two types of water. How do you know that it's referring to the type of water you're allowed to get hana from? It's linking it to the type of water you're not allowed to get hana from. Which water is that? Water that goes on the mizbeach. You're not allowed to get hana out of that. It's poured on Simchus Beis HaSha'eva by Sukkos is Nisach HaMayim. It's referring to that water. So that's what it's linked to when it says it's like blood. So you should not be allowed to get hana from it. So the Gemara says, no, it's not correct. It says al haaretz tishbachenu. It's poured out. It's not linked to blood which is put on the mizbeach. It's linked to blood which is poured. So the Gemara says, well, maybe it's like blood which is poured in front of an avodah zarah as a service to avodah zarah. That's poured out, and that's also asur b'hana. The Gemara says, no. Blood which is poured before avodah zarah also is called nisuch. It's also called a special service. It's not called poured out. Like we have a pasuk that says, Yishtu Yein Nisicham. Gemara asks, according to Chizkiah, why do we need this pasuk linking blood and water? Chizkiah holds that everything is automatically mutter b'hana. Why do you need a pasuk that links blood to water? So Gemara answers this for a completely different halacha, which we've seen in the first parak in this Masechta, to teach me that blood of karbanos is not a machshir. If it gets onto food, it does not prepare them to be makabel tuma, and that's because it's linked to water. Only blood which is linked to water is machshir. Blood of karbanos, which is not linked to water, it's not poured out on the floor. It goes on the mizbeach. That is not machshir. Okay, that concludes the Gemara's discussion of blood. The Gemara now moves on to Aver Menachai. Aver Menachai is the Isser that it's forbidden for somebody to eat from a living animal or a limb which was severed from an animal while it's alive. That is forbidden because there's lo sochal hanefesh ma'basar. You cannot eat the soul with the flesh. You cannot have soul still in the flesh when you're eating it. This is also asur not only for Jews, it's asur even for goyim. Bnei Noach have this Isser as well. Yet, the Gemara brings a brisa which says that there is no Isser Hana. How do you see that there's no Isser Hana? Because the Torah says that you're not allowed to give an Aver Menachai to a guy because it'll be lifnei Iver. You're causing him to do a sin. He's not allowed to eat Aver Menachai either. What about the problem that you're getting Hana from it by selling it to a guy or by giving it to him? That's apparently not an issue. The only issue is Isser Hana. The only issue is the fact that it's lifnei Iver, you're causing him to do a sin. Isser Hana doesn't seem to be a problem. So you see, therefore, that Aver Menachai does not have an Isser Hana. How does that fit with Rabbi Avo, who says that everything you're not allowed to eat, you're automatically not allowed to get Hana from? Gemara says, well, I'll tell you why. Because it's linked to blood. The pasuk calls it nefesh, and the pasuk calls blood nefesh. It says, Rak chazak levilti yachal adam ki adam hu nefesh. And Aver Menachai is also called lo yisaychal hanefesh ha'mabarsa. So therefore, just like blood is permitted by Hana, Aver Menachai is also permitted to get Hana from. So it says, okay, same question as before. Chizkiah wouldn't need this. He says that everything is usually assumed to be permitted by Hana. Why does he have this link to blood? What is that for? The Gemara says that's to teach me that all blood has an Isser Hana, that all blood has an Isser Kares. A person who eats any type of blood gets Kares. The sources which talk about kares for blood only talk about blood of karbanos. It doesn't talk about other blood, such as blood from bloodletting of an animal, where you let out blood. How do you know that there's no kares on that? At least if it's blood which has the soul in it. That's learned from this link to Ever Menachai. Just like Ever Menachai is an Isser kares, this is also an Isser kares. Okay, the Gemara now moves on to the next question. This is from Shar Neskal. The halacha is that if an ox gores somebody to death, that ox has to be stoned to death, and the pasuk also says you're not allowed to eat the ox. Now, obviously, if it wasn't shachted, you're not allowed to eat it. The pasuk is coming to teach me even if you went ahead and slaughtered it, shachted it before the sentence of stoning could be carried out, it's still forbidden to you to eat it. Now, the pasuk continues, and it says Ubal Hashar Naki. The owner of the ox is clean. Clean doesn't just mean that he's clean, that he is not held more accountable. It also means that he's gone clean out of his property. He has no longer any monetary gain from this ox. That means that there's an Isser Hana. Now, why does it have to tell me there's an Isser Hana? According to Rabbi Abo, anytime the Torah tells me you're not allowed to eat something, you automatically have an Isser Hana. Not only that, the word here is Lo Ye Ochel. This is a kasha even on Chizkiah. He should also learn from here, just from the word Lo Ye Ochel, that there is an Isser Hana. Why does there have to tell me Bal Hashor Naki, that you don't get anything out of this ox? On that, the Gemara answers that we need it for the skin of this animal. When it says you should not eat the Shar Nishkal, it only says don't eat its flesh. And therefore I know that there's an Isser Hana on the flesh. How do I know that there's an Isser Hana also on the skin? For that I need Bala Shar Naki to tell me that you get nothing out of this animal. You don't even get any value out of its skin. Can't make it into leather. Can't do anything about it. The Gemara says, well, hold on a second. The Bala Shar Naki, not everybody agrees that this is the teachment Isser Hana. Some say you have in Maseches Baba Kama, there's a lot of other halachas you could learn out of this. You could learn that he doesn't have to pay Chatzi Koifer. You could learn that if he gores a woman and she loses her child that she's pregnant with, that you don't need to pay for that. So according to those, that this pasuk Bala Shar Naki is used for all that, now we have a problem. How do they know that he doesn't get any hana out of the skin? You just made the point that you need the pasuk to teach me that. So Gemara says that they learn it from the S. It says S, Losachal S habasar S besara. You shouldn't eat S. It's mean the S is extra to include things that go along with the meat, and that is the skin. The Gemara says, okay, well then we're back to the question: why do you need Bal Hashar Naki, according to the ones who say that is for the skin? Just use S. So the Gemara says they don't hold you can learn anything out of S. And here the Gemara quotes the famous Gemara: do you darshan S or not? The Gemara says Shimon HaMasuni used to it might be Nehemiah HaMasuni, but whoever it was, they went around and they had drashas for every single S in the Torah, and they said that every S is to include something similar, until they got to S Hashem Lekachatiri, you should fear S Hashem your God, and they said, how could you possibly include anything with Hashem? And therefore they said, from now on, there's no more drashas from S. They canceled all the drashas they made based on S. And the student said, well, what's going to be with everything that you said? And they said, well, just like we got credit, we got schar for saying the drashas, we'll get schar for realizing that it's incorrect and being big enough to cancel everything we said. Now Rabbi Kiva disagreed, and he said, no, there is a drasha for Es Hashem Lekachatira, that's to include Talmidei Chachamim, which get their awe from Hashem, as it were. So you see there, though, that Shimon HaMasuni doesn't have a drasha for S anymore, and therefore that's what these Tanaim will hold. You need Bal Shar Naki, because they don't have a drasha S Habasar. Okay, that concludes our kasha from Shar HaNiskal. Now we go to Orla. Orla is that it's forbidden to use fruits of a tree for the first 3 years of its planting, since it was planted. And we have a pasuk that says, Arelim lo ye ochel. That should be enough to tell me that it's an Isra now according to Chizkiah, and certainly according to Rabbi Avo. And yet the Brisa tells me that you need a different pasuk to teach me that there's an Isra hana. That's from the fact that it says, Araltem arlasai arelim lo yeyachel. An extra phrase, araltem arlasai, the repeated language teaches me that there's an Isser Hana. You're not allowed to make paint out of arla. You're not allowed to make fuel out of arla, besides for eating. So why do I need all that? I should just have lo yeyachel. Should be enough according to Chizkiah, and certainly according to Rabbi Abo. So the Gemara says you'd be right. The problem was that we had to write the word lachem in the pasuk of arla. And when you include the word lachem, shalosh shanim yeh lachem, areilim lo yeyochel lachem, seems to imply that it is to you, meaning that there is a heter hana. Therefore, that would cancel the lo yeyochel, and we have to add aratam arlasai to say no, that there is an additional iser hana. The Gemara now asks, once we have the limud of the araltam arlasai to include that there is an iser hana on orla, to override the pasuk of lachem, what is the reason for the word lachem? I mean, it's being overridden, so what's the point in saying lachem altogether? Why don't you just get rid of lachem? Someone says lachem is for a specific limud. It's actually two conflicting limudim, depending on who you hold like. It's about what happens when you have a tree that belongs to the public, a publicly owned tree. Does the Isser Arla apply to that or not? So let's learn from lachem. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the word lachem is to exclude a publicly owned tree, that there is no Isser Arla. According to the Tana Kama, the word lachem is specifically to include a publicly owned tree, that there is an Isser Arla there. How do you understand this machlekes? So the Gemara says, it depends what I would have thought had I not had the word lachem. The rest of the pasuk has the word unatatem. It says, when you will come to the land and you will plant a tree. So according to the Tanakama, unatatem sounds like we're talking to an individual. The public don't plant trees. Person plants a tree. So we're telling a person, when you plant a tree, you have an Isser Arla. That excludes the public. So you have to have the word lachem to include the public. Now Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the word unatatem is plural. It's referring to everybody. The public plants trees. And the word lachem also sounds like it's talking to the public, all of you. So you have two inclusory phrases, one after the other, a reboy and another reboy. Whenever you have two inclusions, one following the other, that's meant to exclude. And therefore, the lachem following unatatem is excluding the public, that there is no Isser Arla on the public at all.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.